I didn't realize how fragile my reality was until I heard another woman casually say his name out loud. Not my name. Not the name I'd known him by for 14 months. But the name my boyfriend had made me use in bed. It happened in a glass-walled office hallway, under cold fluorescent lights, in the middle of an ordinary weekday afternoon. No warning, no build-up, no dramatic pause. Just a handshake. A smile. And 4 words that shattered everything I thought I understood. Robert Walsh, Senior VP of Marketing. My chest tightened so fast I couldn't breathe. Because Robert Walsh wasn't just a name. It was the name my boyfriend, Ethan, had insisted I use during our romantic weekend getaways. The name he whispered when he wanted me to touch him differently. The name that unlocked a version of him I never saw in real life. And now that name belonged to his boss. A real man, standing 3 feet away from me. I remember nodding politely, my hand moving on instinct as I shook his, my mouth forming a smile I didn't feel. My ears rang so loudly I could barely hear the conversation continuing around us. Ethan wouldn't look at me. Not once. His face had gone pale, his jaw clenched tight, his eyes fixed on the elevator numbers like they might save him. The ride down to the lobby passed in silence. So did the drive home. So did the moment he stepped out of my car, murmured a quiet thanks, and disappeared inside without explanation. That was 3 days ago. Since then, my mind hasn't stopped replaying everything. The hotel rooms, the role-playing, the way he became someone else whenever I called him that name. Someone freer, bolder, someone who didn't belong to me. Now I'm lying awake at night asking myself questions I never imagined I'd have to ask. Was I unknowingly playing the role of another man? Was our intimacy ever really ours? Or was I just a substitute, standing in for someone he could never have? I keep staring at my phone, waiting for him to explain, and dreading what the explanation might be, because whatever the truth is, I can already feel it pulling my relationship apart from the inside. Before everything shattered, my relationship with Ethan felt easy. Not perfect, but comfortable in the way that makes you believe you're building something real. I was 27 when we met at a backyard barbecue hosted by a mutual friend. I remember standing near the grill, holding a paper plate with food I wasn't hungry for, when Ethan walked up beside me and asked if I thought documentaries about serial killers were educational or deeply concerning. I laughed before I could stop myself. That was how it started. We bonded quickly over small, ordinary things. Weekend hikes, bad cooking experiments, late-night debates about whether pineapple had any right to exist on pizza. He worked in IT for a mid-sized company. I worked as a project coordinator at a local design firm. Our schedules aligned easily, our conversations flowed without effort. For the first 6 months, everything felt healthy. No love bombing, no pressure, no dramatic highs or lows, just consistency. That was what I liked most about him. Then we started our tradition. Once a month, we'd take short trips, nothing extravagant. Cities within a 4-hour drive, 1 or 2 nights in a nice hotel. A break from routine, a chance to pretend the rest of the world didn't exist. Those weekends became the highlight of our relationship. I still remember our trip to Lakeview, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water, the way the sunset painted the room gold. We ordered room service, drank wine straight from the bottle, and laughed until midnight. Something about being away made everything feel more intense, more intimate, more alive. It wasn't just the hotel or the view. It was the feeling that we were choosing each other, again and again, in places where no one knew us. At home, life was quieter, predictable. We cooked dinner, watched shows, fell asleep on opposite sides of the couch. I didn't think anything was wrong with that. I believed relationships were supposed to have balance, excitement and stability, adventure and routine. So when Ethan suggested our getaways were when he felt most connected to me, I took it as something romantic. I didn't realize it was something else entirely. About 4 months ago, during the planning of our 5th trip, he brought up an idea. We were sitting on my couch, laptop open between us, scrolling through hotel options. He hesitated before speaking, then said, almost casually, "What if we tried something different this time?" I asked what he meant. He smiled, nervous, and said it could be fun to pretend we were different people on our trips. A little role play, nothing serious. I was surprised, but not alarmed. Plenty of couples try new things, right? Then he added one detail that made my stomach tighten. He wanted me to call him by a different name. A specific one. Robert Walsh. I remember laughing and asking why that name. He shrugged. Sounded confident, he said. Sophisticated. I didn't push. At the time, it felt harmless. Just a name, just a game. I even joked that maybe he liked it because it sounded like someone who owned a yacht. He laughed too quickly. But I ignored that. During that trip, something changed. The man beside me wasn't the Ethan I knew at home. As Robert, he was bolder, more demanding, more expressive. He touched me differently, spoke differently, wanted things he'd never asked for before. It was intoxicating and confusing. When we returned home, everything went back to normal. Too normal. When I suggested bringing some of that energy into our everyday life, he shut down. "I'm not that kind of guy in real life," he told me gently. "That's just for trips." I tried to accept it, but a quiet question started growing inside me. Why did he need to become someone else to want me fully? I didn't know then that the answer was already waiting for me, on the 11th floor of his office building. After that 5th trip, something inside me shifted. Not loudly, not all at once. It was quieter than that, like a hairline crack you don't notice until the pressure builds. I started paying attention to the contrast. On our getaways, Ethan, Robert, couldn't keep his hands off me. He spoke with confidence, made decisions without hesitation, pulled me closer like he was afraid to let go. At home, he was affectionate, yes, but restrained, predictable, almost careful. It wasn't bad, but once you've seen what someone is capable of, it's impossible to unsee it. One night, after we returned from a weekend in Bridgeport, I tried to bridge the gap. We were in my kitchen, plates still in the sink from dinner, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. I leaned against the counter and said, as lightly as I could, "You know, we don't have to wait for hotel rooms to be adventurous." He froze. Not dramatically, just enough for me to notice. He turned, rested his hands on the counter, and avoided my eyes. "That's not who I am," he said. "That stuff is just fantasy." I asked why fantasy required a different name. He laughed it off, said I was overthinking, said I was reading too much into something that was supposed to be fun. So I dropped it. But the question didn't disappear. It followed me. I noticed how particular he was about our trips. He always chose the hotels, always insisted on certain cities, certain layouts, certain lighting. Always the same name. Once, during a weekend in Westbrook, he corrected me sharply when I almost used his real name in bed. "Not that," he said. "You know what to call me." The intensity in his voice startled me. Afterward, he was distant, like I'd broken an unspoken rule. Another time he slipped. We were checking out of a hotel, standing in line at the front desk, when he leaned close and whispered, "Good job this weekend." "Not thank you, not I had fun." "Good job." The words made my skin prickle. Back home, our life stayed unchanged. We texted about groceries. We planned dinners. We talked about work frustrations. He never brought up the trips unless I did. And when I did, he seemed uncomfortable, eager to move on. I started wondering if the trips weren't about us at all. Maybe they were about escape or substitution. Still, I told myself I was being unfair. Everyone has fantasies, right? Everyone has compartments. Then came the small lies. Nothing explosive, just omissions. He avoided talking about work more than he used to. Changed the subject when I asked about his office. Got tense when I mentioned picking him up one day. "I'll just meet you," he'd say. "It's easier." I believed him. Until 3 days ago, when his car broke down, and I offered, without thinking, to pick him up from work. He hesitated, just a second, then agreed. I remember telling myself that hesitation didn't mean anything. I remember adjusting my rearview mirror as I pulled into the downtown business district, reminding myself to relax. I had no idea that a single hallway, a single name, was about to connect every loose thread I'd been ignoring. And once that connection was made, there would be no way to unsee the truth. The lobby of Ethan's office building smelled like polished marble and burnt coffee. I remember noticing that detail because my nerves were already humming. One of those moments where your senses sharpen before something goes wrong. I checked in at the reception desk and gave his name. The receptionist smiled politely and told me to head up to the 11th floor. I rode the elevator alone, watching the numbers climb, rehearsing a casual greeting in my head. "Hey, sorry I'm early. Hope your day wasn't too crazy." Normal things. When the doors opened, I stepped into a maze of glass walls and muted gray carpet. Ethan spotted me almost immediately. For a brief second, relief flashed across his face. Then something else followed. Panic. He walked toward me quickly, lowering his voice. "I didn't think you'd come up," he said. "I told you I would," I replied, confused. He forced a smile. "Yeah, let's grab my things." Before I could ask what that meant, a group of coworkers approached us. They looked friendly, relaxed, like people wrapping up their day. Introductions were made. I shook hands, smiled, did the polite partner thing. And then a man stepped out of an office at the end of the hallway. He was tall, well-dressed, confident in the way people are when they're used to being listened to. One of Ethan's colleagues waved him over. "Hey, Rob," she said brightly. "Come meet Ethan's girlfriend." My chest tightened at the sound of that nickname. Rob. The man smiled and extended his hand. Robert Walsh, Senior VP of Marketing. Nice to meet you. The hallway tilted. My hand moved on autopilot, fingers closing around his while my brain stalled completely. Robert Walsh. The name I'd whispered in dark hotel rooms. The name Ethan responded to with hunger. The name that changed him. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. I turned to Ethan. He was staring at the floor. His face had gone completely blank, like someone had pulled the plug on his expression. He wouldn't meet my eyes, wouldn't look at me at all. The conversation continued, something about deadlines, a joke I didn't hear, but it all sounded distant, like I was underwater. My ears rang. My skin felt too tight. I nodded when appropriate, smiled when expected. Then finally we escaped toward the elevator. The doors closed. Silence. The air between us felt thick, suffocating. I waited. 3 floors passed. 4. Nothing. Are you going to explain? I asked quietly. Ethan didn't answer. The elevator chimed at the lobby level. He stepped out ahead of me without looking back. The walk to my car felt unreal. Streetlights blurred past the windshield as I drove. My hands were clenched so tightly around the steering wheel, my fingers ached. Still, he said nothing. When we reached his apartment, he opened the door, paused, and finally spoke. Thanks for the ride. That was it. No apology, no explanation, no acknowledgement of what had just happened. He closed the door behind him, leaving me sitting in my car, engine still running, heart pounding like it was trying to escape my chest. I drove home in a daze. That night, I replayed every moment, every trip, every correction, every time he became someone else when I used that name. The realization hit me slowly, but when it did, it was brutal. I hadn't been sharing a fantasy with my boyfriend. I had been stepping into someone else's shadow, becoming a stand-in, a substitute for a man he wanted, but couldn't have. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. And 3 days later, the silence between us was louder than any confession could have been. The first thing I noticed was how quiet my apartment felt. Not peaceful, hollow. Every sound echoed too long. The ticking of the clock, the hum of my laptop fan, my own breathing when I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying that hallway over and over like a scene my mind refused to let end. 3 days passed. We texted, but only about surface things. Did you eat? Busy day? Talk later? Later never came, and the silence between the words felt intentional. I oscillated between anger and self-doubt so fast it made me nauseous. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe I'm being dramatic. But then the memories would come back, uninvited. The way Ethan's posture changed when I called him that name, the way he corrected me when I almost slipped, the intensity, the transformation. By the 4th night, I knew I couldn't keep pretending this would resolve itself. I texted him, "Can we talk tomorrow morning?" The reply came almost instantly. Okay. No emoji, no reassurance, no question mark. That alone told me everything. Saturday morning, I woke early and made breakfast out of pure, nervous energy. French toast, berries, coffee brewing, even though my stomach was already in knots. By the time Ethan arrived, the food had gone cold. He stood in my doorway like a guest, not a partner. His eyes flicked around the apartment, avoiding mine. I didn't waste time. I met Robert Walsh, I said. His shoulders tensed. He reached for the coffee pot like he needed something to hold on to. His hand shook slightly. He's my boss, he said flatly. I told you that. You didn't tell me his name, I replied. Silence. I stayed calm, almost detached, as I laid it all out. The trips, the name, the way he changed, the moments that hadn't made sense until now. I spoke slowly, carefully, because I needed him to understand this wasn't an accusation. It was a reckoning. When I finished, Ethan broke. Not gently. He collapsed into the chair, his face crumpling as sobs tore out of him. His breathing turned erratic, his hands covering his face like he was trying to disappear. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he kept saying. I swear. I waited. When his crying slowed, I said the words I had rehearsed all night. I need to forgive you for my own peace, I said quietly. But that doesn't mean I'm staying. He looked up sharply. You're leaving? His voice cracked. No, we can fix this. I'll change. I'll stop the trips. We don't need the name anymore. That's not the point, I said. He reached across the table for my hands. I stood up. I walked to my bedroom and returned with a box. Inside were the things he'd given me over 14 months. Souvenirs, birthday gifts, small reminders of a relationship I now saw clearly. I set the box down between us. This isn't a conversation about fixing us, I said. This is closure. The shift in him was immediate. The tears vanished. The softness hardened into something sharp. He laughed bitterly and leaned back in his chair. You're really going to throw this away? He scoffed. Over a fantasy? Then the insults started. He called me boring, said I'd let myself go, said my job wasn't going anywhere. And when that didn't get a reaction, he told me the truth. He'd been sleeping with Robert for nearly 2 years, long before he met me. The trip started when Robert ended things. I wasn't a partner. I was a replacement. I don't remember him leaving. I remember the French toast sitting untouched on the table until evening. And the moment I realized something devastatingly simple. The man I loved never really existed. The days after Ethan left blurred together in a way I can only describe as disorienting. Not because I missed him, but because I kept realizing, over and over again, that I had never truly known him at all. My apartment, once filled with his presence, now felt contaminated by memory. The couch where we used to sit. The kitchen counter where he leaned while talking about his day. Even the space in my bed where he slept felt foreign, like it belonged to a stranger. I didn't cry much. That surprised me. Instead, I felt hollow, like something had been surgically removed and my body hadn't caught up yet. On Sunday, I met up with my friends Alex and Chris. They listened without interrupting as I told them everything. The trips, the name, the revelation. Alex stared at the table for a long moment before saying, "That's not just cheating, that's psychological." Chris nodded slowly. "She used you as a vessel. That's messed up." Hearing someone else say it out loud made my chest loosen for the first time in days. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. Monday, I went back to work and buried myself in projects. I stayed late, volunteered for tasks I normally avoided. Productivity became my coping mechanism. When I got home that evening, there was a letter slid under my door. Ethan's handwriting. I didn't open it. I took it straight to the kitchen sink, struck a match, and watched the paper curl and blacken until it turned to ash. Whatever apology or justification he'd written wasn't something I needed to carry with me. 2 days later, I signed a lease on a new apartment. Smaller, brighter, empty. A place with no shared memories. Blocking Ethan was easy. What I hadn't expected was how quickly he would try to rewrite the narrative. A week after the breakup, I ran into Melissa, one of his close friends, at the grocery store. I'd always liked her. She was kind, observant. She looked uncomfortable when she saw me. After some awkward small talk, she finally said, "I think you should know. Ethan's been telling people you cheated on him." The words hit harder than I expected. She explained how he had spun an elaborate story, texts he claimed to have seen, a supposed emotional affair I never had. In his version, he was the betrayed one. Most people believed him, except one. Melissa had run into Robert Walsh's current girlfriend at a work function. The woman mentioned how uncomfortable it was having Ethan around, given his history with Robert. That was when the pieces clicked into place. I thanked Melissa and told her I wasn't interested in correcting the record. I didn't need everyone to believe me. I just needed to believe myself. Then things escalated again. 2 days later, I was sitting alone at a coffee shop near my new apartment when someone sat down across from me without asking. I looked up and felt my stomach drop. Robert Walsh. In person, outside of Ethan's fantasies, he looked ordinary, tired even. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said quickly. "I just wanted to clear the air." He explained that his relationship with Ethan had never been as serious as Ethan portrayed. It had started as an affair. It ended when Robert chose someone else. What unsettled him, he said, was learning how deeply Ethan had woven him into our relationship, using his full name, recreating specific scenarios, turning intimacy into imitation. "It felt obsessive," Robert admitted. "I didn't know how bad it had gotten." He apologized, though he didn't need to, and told me Ethan no longer worked at his company. After our breakup, Ethan's behavior had become erratic. There had been scenes, confrontations, an eventual resignation. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt cold. The man I had loved wasn't just unfaithful. He was unraveling. That night, I received a text from an unknown number. It was Ethan. He said he was in therapy now, that he finally understood his issues, that he needed to talk to me one last time. I didn't reply. Some conversations don't bring closure. They reopen wounds. I focused on my move. New furniture, new routines, new silence that felt earned, not empty. I started climbing at a local gym, took a cooking class on Wednesday nights. Slowly, deliberately, I rebuilt myself around choices that were mine. But even as I moved forward, I could feel something shifting beneath the surface. Ethan wasn't done. And I hadn't yet reached the lowest point of this story. The days after Ethan left blurred together in a way I can only describe as disorienting. Not because I missed him, but because I kept realizing, over and over again, that I had never truly known him at all. My apartment, once filled with his presence, now felt contaminated by memory. The couch where we used to sit, the kitchen counter where he leaned while talking about his day. Even the space in my bed where he slept felt foreign, like it belonged to a stranger. I didn't cry much. That surprised me. Instead, I felt hollow, like something had been surgically removed and my body hadn't caught up yet. On Sunday, I met up with my friends, Alex and Chris. They listened without interrupting as I told them everything. The trips, the name, the revelation. Alex stared at the table for a long moment before saying, "That's not just cheating. That's psychological." Chris nodded slowly. "She used you as a vessel. That's messed up." Hearing someone else say it out loud made my chest loosen for the first time in days. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. Monday, I went back to work and buried myself in projects. I stayed late, volunteered for tasks I normally avoided. Productivity became my coping mechanism. When I got home that evening, there was a letter slid under my door. Ethan's handwriting. I didn't open it. I took it straight to the kitchen sink, struck a match, and watched the paper curl and blacken until it turned to ash. Whatever apology or justification he'd written wasn't something I needed to carry with me. 2 days later, I signed a lease on a new apartment. Smaller, brighter, empty. A place with no shared memories. Blocking Ethan was easy. What I hadn't expected was how quickly he would try to rewrite the narrative. A week after the breakup, I ran into Melissa, one of his close friends, at the grocery store. I'd always liked her. She was kind, observant. She looked uncomfortable when she saw me. After some awkward small talk, she finally said, "I think you should know. Ethan's been telling people you cheated on him." The words hit harder than I expected. She explained how he had spun an elaborate story, texts he claimed to have seen, a supposed emotional affair I never had. In his version, he was the betrayed one. Most people believed him, except one. Melissa had run into Robert Walsh's current girlfriend at a work function. The woman mentioned how uncomfortable it was having Ethan around, given his history with Robert. That was when the pieces clicked into place. I thanked Melissa and told her I wasn't interested in correcting the record. I didn't need everyone to believe me. I just needed to believe myself. Then things escalated again. 2 days later, I was sitting alone at a coffee shop near my new apartment when someone sat down across from me without asking. I looked up and felt my stomach drop. Robert Walsh. In person, outside of Ethan's fantasies, he looked ordinary, tired even. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said quickly. "I just wanted to clear the air." He explained that his relationship with Ethan had never been as serious as Ethan portrayed. It had started as an affair. It ended when Robert chose someone else. What unsettled him, he said, was learning how deeply Ethan had woven him into our relationship, using his full name, recreating specific scenarios, turning intimacy into imitation. "It felt obsessive," Robert admitted. "I didn't know how bad it had gotten." He apologized, though he didn't need to, and told me Ethan no longer worked at his company. After our breakup, Ethan's behavior had become erratic. There had been scenes, confrontations, an eventual resignation. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt cold. The man I had loved wasn't just unfaithful. He was unraveling. That night, I received a text from an unknown number. It was Ethan. He said he was in therapy now, that he finally understood his issues, that he needed to talk to me one last time. I didn't reply. Some conversations don't bring closure. They reopen wounds. I focused on my move. New furniture, new routines, new silence that felt earned, not empty. I started climbing at a local gym, took a cooking class on Wednesday nights. Slowly, deliberately, I rebuilt myself around choices that were mine. But even as I moved forward, I could feel something shifting beneath the surface. Ethan wasn't done, and I hadn't yet reached the lowest point of this story. The morning after I found Ethan's posts, I didn't tell anyone what had happened. I didn't call my parents or text my friends or even speak to Samuel about it. I was done with people telling me what I should do, done with feeling small. For the first time in months, I realized something. I had spent so much of my life trying to manage his feelings, his version of our story, our relationship. I'd walked on eggshells, making sure everything looked perfect for him. I'd buried my own doubts I should have listened to when they first started creeping up. I had ignored the red flags because I wanted to be loved, to be chosen, to have a story that seemed like it made sense. And I had built my life around him. But now, I wasn't going to fight for him anymore. For the first time, I was fighting for me. The emotional walls I'd put up over the past months cracked. And with that, something inside me shifted. I knew I couldn't stay silent while Ethan turned the narrative into something that wasn't mine to control. I knew I couldn't let the version of me he was trying to create remain unchallenged. I wasn't the woman he was portraying. I wasn't weak. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't the villain in our story. I had been hurt, deeply, terribly, but I wasn't going to let him define me. I grabbed my phone, and without overthinking it, I posted a story. A single, simple photo of me standing outside, smiling. Real. Genuine. I didn't look perfect. My hair was windblown, my eyes tired, but I didn't care. The caption was short and to the point. There are stories that don't need rewriting. I know who I am, and I know who I am not. I didn't look at the post again. I didn't check the comments. I didn't need validation from strangers. I needed to hear those words from myself. I needed to claim that truth. The next step was harder. I called Phoebe first. She was my closest friend, the one who had stuck by me even when the rest of the group had scattered. She answered on the second ring, and before I could say anything, she asked, "Have you seen the posts?" I exhaled deeply. "Yes," I said, "and I'm done letting him have the power to twist my story." "Good," Phoebe replied, "because I'm so tired of watching you apologize for things you didn't do. He's the one who messed up." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "I'm done apologizing," I said firmly. "I'm done with him, and I'm done with this version of me I've been carrying." Phoebe didn't need to say anything else. She knew. Next, I called Samuel. I had already made up my mind. His support had been unwavering since we'd gotten together. But this was different. This was about me standing on my own, not just relying on him. He picked up on the first ring. "Hey, love," he said softly. "How are you?" "I'm good," I replied, my voice steady. "Better than good, actually." "Yeah?" he said, the curiosity in his tone rising. "What's up?" "I just wanted to say thank you," I said, "for being here, for never doubting me, even when I wasn't sure of myself." There was a pause on the other end. Then he said, "You don't ever have to thank me for that. You're my partner, always." I smiled, feeling the weight of the last few months start to lift. For once, it wasn't about what Ethan had done to me. It was about the people who chose to stay, about the people who saw me, not as a victim, but as someone with power and resilience. "I've made a decision," I continued. "I'm done with all of it. I'm done with Ethan, done with the past. I'm ready to move forward completely, not just with you, but with myself." Samuel was silent for a moment before he spoke. "I love you. I'm here. You don't have to do this alone." And that was it. The words I'd needed to hear. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I was doing this for me. That night, I went through my phone and blocked every one of Ethan's numbers. I removed his friends from my social media. I deleted every trace of his existence from my life, no second thoughts. The next morning, I woke up in my new apartment, sunlight filtering through the curtains, a quiet sense of peace settling over me. I made my coffee, sat down at the table, and wrote in my journal. I know who I am now. I know my worth, and nothing, no one, can take that from me again. For the first time in a long time, I felt whole. Not because everything was perfect, but because I was choosing to heal in my own time, on my own terms. After I hit send on my last post, something shifted in the air around me. It was as if I had finally released the tension that had been twisting my insides for months. A strange kind of calm washed over me. I didn't need to get the last word. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I had spoken my truth, and that was enough. The fallout started almost immediately. Ethan's friends, the ones who had blindly supported him during our breakup, the ones who believed the lies he had spun, came for me first. It wasn't subtle. One by one, they started sending me messages, all echoing the same sentiment. "Why did you have to go public? Why rub it in Ethan's face? You could have handled this privately." They didn't understand. They didn't see the manipulation. The way Ethan had constructed this version of our relationship where I was the villain, where I was the one who betrayed him. But that wasn't my battle to fight anymore. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I focused on the people who had actually stood by me. Phoebe, Samuel, and my family. They were the ones who mattered. They were the ones who saw through the noise and understood my silence wasn't weakness. Samuel was incredible through all of it. His support was unwavering, but not in the way I had expected. He didn't try to shield me from the fallout. He didn't promise me that everything would magically go back to normal. He just was there, and for that, I was endlessly grateful. "Don't worry about the people who aren't in your corner," he told me one night as we sat on the couch together, his hand resting on my shoulder. "The truth is already out. You don't owe anyone any explanations." I nodded. I was learning to let go of the need to justify myself. I had nothing left to prove. Then came Drake. The phone call was brief, but it hit me harder than I had expected. I hadn't heard from him since our explosive engagement party incident, but somehow he had gotten a hold of my number again. His voice was calm, unnervingly calm when he spoke. I just wanted to say you've been making a big mistake, he said, his tone carrying a sense of entitlement I could almost feel through the phone. You've been manipulated, you know. Samuel is just like me. You'll see it eventually. I gripped my phone tighter, refusing to let his words take root in me. I had already learned the hard way that what he said didn't matter. I wasn't the same person I had been when I let him walk out of my life. No, Drake, you're wrong. I don't need you in my life anymore, I said firmly. You had your chance. This is about me now. There was silence on the other end for a long moment. Then he scoffed. I'll let you figure it out then. And that was it. He never called again. The biggest blow, though, came from his family. One afternoon, I got a call from my mother. Her voice was shaky, her words hurried. Ethan's mom called, she said. She wants to talk. She said they've been worried about you. I felt my stomach twist. Worried about me? After everything? They're asking if you can let Ethan explain himself. They're all worried that things will get worse if you don't give him a chance to apologize. I couldn't believe it. For weeks, they had stood by him. They had sided with his narrative. And now, when the dust had settled and the truth had come to light, they were still clinging to the belief that he was the victim. Mom, I'm not doing this, I said, my voice firm. I've had enough. They've chosen their side, and now it's my turn to choose mine. Ethan doesn't get to come back into my life because he's sorry. This isn't about forgiveness anymore. This is about self-respect. She didn't respond right away, but I could hear the hesitation in her voice. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had drawn a line in the sand. One I wouldn't let anyone cross. Okay, honey, she said softly. I just want you to be sure, but we're here for you, no matter what. And that was the end of it. I didn't hear from Ethan's family again. I knew they wouldn't contact me anymore, not after everything had come out. The truth, after all, had a way of cutting through all the layers of lies and guilt, no matter how much anyone tried to rewrite it. As for my own healing, it didn't come in big, dramatic waves. It came in small, quiet moments of reclaiming my life. I was taking walks again. Long, uninterrupted walks, with no destination, just to feel the sunlight on my face and the wind in my hair. I had started doing yoga, slow, steady movements that helped me listen to my body again, after months of avoiding it. And I finally returned to physical therapy, something I'd put off for so long, convinced that nothing would ever be the same. But everything was changing. It's funny how life works, isn't it? We can spend years, months, sometimes entire lifetimes, tied up in someone else's idea of who we are. We bend ourselves in ways we think are right, only to realize that the moment we stop trying to hold the pieces together, we finally start to feel whole again. That's what I learned. Not just from Ethan, but from myself. I spent so long trying to fix things for him, making excuses, hiding my doubts, silencing my instincts, because I thought that's what love was. I thought that if I gave enough, sacrificed enough, I'd finally feel secure. I thought that someone else's happiness could make me feel whole. But what I've realized is that happiness isn't something you find in another person. It's something you build for yourself. And that's what I've started doing. I look at the woman in the mirror now, and she's different. She's not the girl who cried herself to sleep at night, hoping things would magically get better. She's not the one who waited for apologies that would never come. She's the one who finally realized that self-respect and self-love have to come first. I'm not perfect. I'm still learning, still growing, still healing. But I'm stronger than I ever was before. And I've got something worth fighting for now, myself. As for Samuel, he's been my constant. Not in a way that feels possessive or clingy, but in a way that's grounded. He's the one who saw me when I couldn't see myself. He's the one who held my hand while I figured out who I was again, without rushing me, without pushing me to be anything I wasn't ready to be. We're planning our future now, together, yes, but not because we need each other, but because we want each other. And that's a different kind of love. It's the kind that supports, doesn't consume. For the first time, I'm not waiting for someone else to complete me. I'm complete. And as for Ethan, I'm done with his chapter. I'm done rewriting it. His actions, his words, those belong to him now, not to me. He can twist the narrative all he wants, but the truth is simple. I was never his to define, I was always mine. I've learned that we can't change the past no matter how much we try, but we can choose how we move forward. And I choose peace. I choose joy. I choose a future where I'm the one writing my own story. This isn't the ending I imagined when everything first fell apart, but now I see it for what it truly is, my beginning.